Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to the Den of the Drake. Other dragons hoard gold, while I hoard internet cringe. I got a special announcement for all of you. Today marks the first annual—
Hey! I got here as soon as I saw your email about giving me a bonus. Drake, I can't tell you how much it means to me and my family.
Oh no, we don't do bonuses here. I just knew it was the only way I could get you to come in to work on your day off.
You're joking.
Larry, let me show you something.
Retinal scan accepted. Welcome back, Drake.
Where do you get all the money to keep buying all this insane crap?
I'm not gonna answer that. You know, since the last Keep sponsorship, I've been doing a lot of thinking.
You mean the sponsorship where you ruined my date by making fun of me for being bald?
So not only is he stupid, but he's also broke. Yeah, that one. Ever since then, I've been thinking about the incredible scientists that make Keeps a reality. Those brave men of science saw that 2 out of 3 men lose their hair by the age of 35 and said to themselves, "We can make clinically proven and research-backed solutions to help those poor balding men." Those scientists were heroes, Larry. I hate them.
Drake, you hate everyone. What does that have to do with buying a rocket?
Come on, Larry, use your brain. I'm jealous of all the attention that those scientists are getting, so I bought a rocket to launch an expedition to space, so I can one-up Keeps' 24/7 network of expert medical advisors, prescribers, and doctors by giving the moon a full head of hair. Keeps may offer a full year of unlimited messaging for their clients, but after I pull this off, I'll be a god among the balding population.
You're flying to space to give the moon hair.
Don't be stupid, Larry. I'm not flying to space to give the moon hair.
I knew I should have just taken that job as a Walmart greeter.
Little Spoon, this is Mission Control. The order has been placed.
What order?
For the first ever Transorbit Keeps delivery. With Keeps, you can get quality expert care without even visiting a doctor's office or pharmacy. All Keeps treatment plans are doctor recommended and delivered straight to your location at half the cost of a traditional pharmacy. Okay, now apply the medication to the moon's crust.
Okay, nothing happened.
Nothing? What do you mean nothing happened? Look at all these before and after pictures. How could it not be working?
Well, gee, Drake, I wonder why it didn't work. Maybe it's because the moon is made out of rock that in no way matches the biological composition of a human scalp.
Well, you could have said something before I bought the rocket, Larry. Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/denofthedrake or click the link in the description. That's KEEPS.com/denofthedrake.
Okay, are we done here? I'd like to salvage what's left of my day off. Oh, ha ha, I'm going to abandon Larry in space. Very funny. Now get me home so I can watch TV. I hate that dragon.
Do you ever get that weird feeling that you might be forgetting something? Oh, well, it must have not have been that important. What is important is the story I have for you today. You all know that one of the best parts about interacting with problem players is that eventually the session ends, and you get to avoid them for the rest of the day. But what happens when that problem player is someone that you're dating? Well, in the story I have for you today, dear listener, it ends in 5 dead campaigns killed by a man who really needs to read up on the definition of insanity. Now, without any further delay, let's go ahead and dive right into the horrifying world of r/RPG-Horror-Stories. Enjoy. This week's story comes to us from user Foxshane, and is titled The Guy Who Single-Handedly Killed 5 Different Games, and is still botching it to this day. This is my first time posting here, so apologies in advance if I'm a little awkward or anything. So a few years ago, I, 20 to 22, was dating this guy, and he loved D&D. He actually convinced me to start playing and got me really into it. But the games we played were often overpopulated with players, so the sessions would mostly consist of waiting for players' turns to end and never really getting to do much of anything. Eventually, we decided to start playing with my two siblings, my sister, who we'll call Ryan, 24 to 26, and my brother, 14 to 16, who we shall call Peter. Since we figured a smaller group would be more enjoyable, I had no idea that the tedious many-playered games of old had completely protected me from learning the truth about this player. It genuinely seemed like it would be a really good change of pace to finally get to play small, simple games with just a few players. It has been 5 games, several almost games, and I am finally free from this disaster of a player/DM. So I am more than ready to dish. We shall call him Kevin, 23 to 25. Now, I should mention that there was an almost game, which actually got cancelled because our friend wasn't keeping up with his college work. Honestly, Kevin, this one was not his fault. He did reveal in less than half an hour that Ryan's secretly drow character was a drow though. So, there's that. From this point forward, all of our games consisted of only the 4 of us. Game 1. Waterdeep. Kevin is the DM. And dang, this first real game was a doozy. We were playing Waterdeep with Kevin as the DM. I was playing a drow noblewoman who was notably a surface-living, sun-proof, sheltered-as-heck princess of a woman. Ryan was playing a male human cleric, and Peter was a female tiefling paladin. Due to our small party size, Kevin also played a DMPC, who was a female fighter/rogue half-elf. Initially, he assured us that she wouldn't make much of an impact apart from occasional DPS. Now, if only he mentioned that she was 1 level higher than us and also min-maxed. It's hard to explain, but the way Kevin DM'd things just had to go a certain way. Something about the way Kevin set up scenes would force certain characters to center stage and prevent other characters from having any voice. The character who he always put center stage was Ryan's cleric, which meant that Peter and I were out of luck. The game was kind of like a cheap Mo slice-of-life anime with fantasy settings in Kevin's head. And like a cheap anime, some characters just wouldn't have screen time. And those who did suddenly had the world revolve around them as if they were subjugated to some wacky anime shenanigans. Kevin would even describe our characters' exact reactions and feelings for us in order to make sure that these things happened exactly as he wanted, even if it was extremely out of character for our characters to do. Peter's character was the first one to be stepped on by the anime hammer, since she was going to have a slightly unhinged personality and sort of a slow reveal of this. Unfortunately, because of the way Kevin DM'd, Peter's character was forced into being a little more than a shy tough girl. The one time Peter tried to have her make an off-color joke about how to clean up a body, Kevin threatened an alignment check, and to take away her paladin powers. I don't think any of us even knew that we were playing with alignments. Kevin also insisted on making comments about how top-heavy Peter's tiefling was, and she had to have an anime boob fall at least once with Ryan's cleric. My character, the sheltered drow woman, was pretty much never allowed to do anything. It was like Kevin didn't know what to do with her, so he just kinda did nothing. What little he did do also always involved other drow. My character would go into a shop and it would just randomly be run by a drider. Or she would be at the harbor and just happen upon another drow. This actually meant nothing to her though, because she's never been exposed to her own culture, and had no idea what a drider even was or what the struggle of the drow people was. It made the scenes incredibly awkward, and after all that, well, she seriously just wasn't allowed to talk. Kevin would just sort of never have a character talk to her, or never have a scene involve her. So that even if I tried to speak up, the NPCs would just ignore my character. But damn, was Ryan's cleric allowed to talk? Kevin, who I'll remind you was my boyfriend at the time, was obsessed with Ryan's cleric. See, every character in the game was sort of pushed into a relationship with some random NPC or another. My character got a drow fellow. Peter's got a shopkeeper. We could try and say our characters weren't interested, but that wouldn't do anything to stop the NPC's advancements. Ryan's cleric, though, he got very special treatment. The DMPC was his forced romance. There was constant flirting with Ryan's cleric, repeated anime boob falls, his clothes getting blasted off, twice, and so much sucking up to him. Kevin also made the story pretty much entirely about Ryan's cleric, like the cleric was the protagonist or something. Every mini-story focused on the cleric's problems, life, and goals, and the DMPC, well, was always there at his side to help him out. Except for the small mini-adventure where Peter's character got the only magic weapon any of us ever got in that game. And, of course, it was ridiculously overpowered. But I digress. Kevin's DMPC was a rich noble girl who was forced to join the Thieves' Guild. She had a cursed domino mask that she couldn't take off, and during session 1, she pretended to be a man in order to protect her identity. Kevin kept making references to how she seemed uncomfortable in men's clothes, and seemed to look longingly at the beautiful dresses worn by the noble women, before her being revealed as a woman, which would check out if she didn't wear black leather battle gear 24/7. The way our characters learned all of this, though, was that we had to get fancy clothes for a ball, and the Drider tailor could just tell that she was a woman, I guess, and put her into a super frilly dress. On, like, the second session. Poof! Her need to hide her identity was gone, she's a woman now. She was also cured of her curse, by Ryan's cleric, of course, in like the third session during an awkward anime hot spring scene. All of this matters for future games because Kevin just could not figure out how to stretch out the drama. In terms of forced romance, Peter's character's treatment was extra bad. So for plot reasons, we had to stop by a shop to pick up some magic item or whatnot. Peter and Ryan's characters both went together, and upon entering, Kevin proceeded to describe the incredibly hot shopkeeper, and how utterly amazing he was and how he made Peter's character blush. But it got worse. I can't remember the exact circumstances, but Kevin had Peter roll a wisdom saving throw. Something about whether or not Peter's tiefling fell for the hotness, I guess. Ryan's cleric didn't have to, cause I guess he's straight according to God. Lol. Peter rolled very, very high, and being a paladin, he had a very good modifier. But apparently he failed that roll because I guess Peter's paladin fell for the seduction anyways? Not only is this not how these rolls work, but yikes. Ryan tried in vain to interrupt/deflect this whole encounter, but was literally ignored whenever she spoke up. Ryan and Peter conspired to have their characters hook up and try to combat this nonsense. They told the party that they were going to a restaurant to get food, and on the way had their plans utterly foiled by every possible anime shenanigan ever made. Random side characters popping up, a literal half-giant wandering the streets, everything imaginable. And when they finally got to the restaurant, they weren't allowed to actually roleplay being there, because, of course, it immediately had another stupid shenanigan. They knew they failed completely when the epilogue had Peter's character getting pregnant with the shopkeeper's baby. Now, I never actually told Ryan and Peter about this, but that shopkeeper was one of the DM's original characters. So, I guess my character was the only one not dating my boyfriend's character. This is all without mentioning the extreme changes he made to the Waterdeep module story. Out of the 4 villains, Kevin chose the evil rich couple whose names I've forgotten. This didn't stop the other villains from making random appearances, but that was a forgivable little thing. The big thing was the ending. Ryan had heard from her friends that this ending was cool, and was most excited for the crazy cool mansion at the end of the module with this villain set. But Kevin had other plans. I guess he thought that he was a better writer than the official D&D writers, because we got a multi-story demon-infested tower with crazy people at the bottom who wanted to summon demons from another world. We killed the demons, saved the day, and that was it. No cool mansion. Just a weird parade that was crashed by hordes of demons and a magical teleporting tower. And that was only the first game. I seriously wonder why we kept doing this to ourselves, but here we go. So obviously most of what is happening here is a recipe for a miserable D&D table. But there's something that I want to address here that a lot of new DMs get wrong and don't even realize it. You never want to tell the players how their characters are feeling. I mean, sure, it's reasonable for a new DM to want to express a desired atmosphere by describing the emotions of the characters. After all, that is exactly what movies and video games do in order to build sympathy from their audience. But like I've said a bajillion other times, D&D is not a movie, nor is it a video game. You see, you don't gotta make your audience sympathize with the characters because your audience is the characters. You see where I'm going with this? If I bring a stoic dwarven berserker to the table and my DM tells me that they feel sad about something, I know that it was done to build atmosphere, but I'm still gonna be thinking to myself, nah, my character is a selfish asshole who only cares for battle. He wouldn't feel sad about this thing. Instead, focus on describing what's happening in the world, and let those reactions come naturally. The players may not need to get to know their own characters, but you as the DM are their only line to the rest of the world. Instead of saying, Ragnar the Red feels scared of the dragon, describe why Ragnar should be scared of the dragon. And even if Ragnar doesn't wet his pants, you'll often find that players have a hard time faking their own reactions, which, in my opinion, is a lot more fun to watch. Game 2. Homebrew. Ryan is the DM. The next game was a homebrew campaign run by Ryan. Ryan is the DM, Kevin is a player, so no problems, right? I mean, he can't take over our characters if he isn't the one in charge. Or can he? In this game, I was a male bloodhunter human. Ryan had a DMPC who was a male Eladrin fighter. Peter was a male Genasi cleric, and Kevin was a min-maxed female elf wizard. We were told when we started that this was going to be a pretty serious campaign, so we all made characters with pretty dark backstories to match. Frankly, Kevin's character had the least dark backstory, with both my character and Peter's suffering from dead parent syndrome, and Ryan's being trapped on the wrong plane of existence with seemingly no way back. That would be completely fine, of course, since you can't compare trauma, except that Kevin's character kept insisting that she had it way worse than everyone else. Everyone else basically never brought up their trauma because it's not exactly casual conversation with strangers. Kevin's wizardess was a grade A student from an exceedingly wealthy family who was challenged to a duel at magic school by a lower-class human wizard. He was jealous of her and how rich and elfy she was, so they had a school-sanctioned duel where she won by blasting his arm off with an ice spell. This wildly traumatized Kevin's character into hating humans and never using ice magic again. Kevin arranged with Ryan that maybe he could do a trauma roll for ice like Caleb does for fire in Critical Role. This would literally steal the fire trauma thing from Caleb, but also was kinda meaningless, since he didn't even have a single ice spell on his spell list, until Ryan pointed out that he should have at least one for it to matter, which he never cast, so Ryan never had to do the trauma roll thing anyway. This character, I don't even know where to start. There were so many things, like how he was upset that we all got sentimental items at the start of the game, because he wanted to get a magic item at level 1. Or how he had his character weirdly hate Ryan's character, to the point of warning major NPCs to be distrustful of Ryan's character. He didn't back off from this even when the NPCs insisted that Ryan's character was fine. He even had his character speak in High Elf to an Elven NPC, hoping that Ryan's Eladrin character wouldn't be able to understand what his character was saying. The result of this was basically that it just pushed his character center stage, as she was the only one interacting directly with the NPC in this language. It also literally invented a new language, as the language didn't exist in Ryan's Homebrew world. But Kevin just ignored that. Oh boy, and then there was the racism. The apparent trauma-induced hatred of humans was so amazingly disruptive. We actually were going to get magic items just like he wanted, but this troublesome character just had to insist that the shopkeeper that we were going to buy them from was evil, and trying to play us entirely on the grounds of the human shopkeeper is human, and humans can't be trusted. He was so wildly mean to the shopkeeper that even after Ryan tried to have the shopkeeper just talk to Peter and my character, it was no good. The magic of the moment was gone. Thankfully, after Ryan spoke with him, this mostly stopped. But those were the little things. The rest of it was all encompassed within the one city we were able to go to before the game stopped altogether. This city was actually designed around Peter's character's backstory, so it was naturally supposed to focus on Peter's character. Kevin couldn't stand not being the center of attention, though, so he decided to hijack the plot. He did this by literally abandoning the team in the middle of a fight. We're talking 4 massive golems inside of a greenhouse-like building, with my character somehow lucky enough to be cornered between one golem and a wall nearby Kevin's character. The DM almost certainly meant for us to tag team this fight, with Ryan and Peter's characters stuck together on the other side of the room. I was down for that up until the point where my health started to get a little low, and Kevin's response was to run away. Straight out the door. Like straight up completely abandoning my character to be crushed by a golem. The supposed reason that Kevin did this was to prepare a spell, and because his character was scared. Naturally, this meant the entire conversation after the fight was comprised of our characters being mad at Kevin for running out on them when they needed her. This completely destroyed the intended post-fight scene, which was going to be a very emotional moment for Peter's character during which he reconciles with his family. Afterwards, Kevin stood by his belief that he did what was right in the fight, because his character was in danger and it was strategic. Because saving his own ass and leaving my character to die is strategic. To this day, I think Kevin thinks that this was still the best move. At any rate, we were willing to work with all of this and find a way to get the story back on track. The idea was that the characters would have a conversation with Kevin's character. She would pour her heart out and then we'd all be friends again and move on. This, of course, did not happen. Kevin decided to add another layer to that strategy defense by having his character explain that even though she had been traveling for quite some time with this group and fought off more than a few terrible monsters with them, she just couldn't possibly trust them. And not just because I was playing a human. Kevin threw the ball into Ryan's court with this one and expected Ryan to adjust the story to fit and to come up with the reason for Kevin's character to trust the others. So even though this was Peter's character's backstory city, the city was quickly reworked to include Kevin's character. A session was spent meeting the family of the wizard whose arm he blasted off. Theoretically, Kevin's character would meet the family, see that they're kind and forgiving, and find a way to move forward. It was a little fast-moving for character development, but based on the last campaign, that's how Kevin likes it. Kevin didn't take to this solution though, oh no, and decided that it just wasn't enough to convince his character to work with the party and stop being hateful to them at every chance. She talked to Ryan between sessions about the possibility of playing a new character, which at this point wasn't the worst option. He still wasn't willing to pay attention to the details of the world that Ryan had set up though, or to work with Ryan on creating a character that fits into said world. He basically tried to create an entire order of specialized knights that wouldn't make sense to exist in the very politically corrupt world, and also wanted to play a race that wouldn't be able to exist in this world due to plot reasons. It was literally the only race that was barred from playing. Kevin was not willing to budge on this new character, so he ended up deciding not to change characters after all. The game would soon fizzle out as no solution could be found, and everyone was understandably a little uncomfortable about continuing to play a game where none of their characters could openly chat with each other without being accused of some great evil because of their suspiciousness. Also, this character was another perfect anime waifu who flusteredly eats toast, and was super gentle and nice but tough as can be at the same time, with all the tsundere tendencies. Ah yes, character trauma. If I were to gather up 5 random D&D characters, I guarantee that at least 2 of them are going to have some sort of personal tragedy happen to them in their backstory. Character trauma is a super common trope in D&D backstories. There are only 2 creatures on Earth that you can take one look at and immediately confirm the existence of daddy issues. People with neon green hair and rogue players. Character trauma in backstories is common for a reason. It's an effective way to motivate a character to leave the world that they find comfortable and pick up a sword or a spellbook. Countless pieces of media put their characters through some kind of suffering because, point blank, it's necessary for the story to exist at all. The problems arise when your character's trauma becomes a pissing contest. There's a reason why therapists can get away with charging so much. People are notorious for having a hard time talking about the shit that's bugging them. Your character's internal conflict isn't exactly casual dinner conversation. And treating it as such not only serves to cheapen it, but it also makes everyone else at the table think that your character's tragic backstory was made more for attention instead of character development. Much like how the aforementioned green-haired person may put their mental illnesses that they got diagnosed at the University of Tumblr in their Twitter bio. The other thing I want to talk about while we got a bit of a lull in the story is the racism in D&D part. First, it's really weird to me that the different playable races in D&D are so vastly different from one another that there's no way that they should even be called races to begin with. I mean, look at this shit. These 2 aren't even going to be in the same class, order, family, genus, or species, so I guess speciest would be more appropriate in this scenario? I don't know, it's irrelevant, and I know that they just chose the word race because it sounded cooler. But I just love to create problems where there aren't any. Anyways, back on topic. I think that giving a character some prejudices can be an effective way to give a character some personality flaws, as long as it is played as a deep flaw that needs to be overcome, and not as a quirky character trait. A prejudiced character can make for some real interesting character growth. Think about the relationship between elves and dwarves in fantasy. The best example, of course, is how Gimli and Legolas go from heated rivals, motivated by their hatred of the other species, to the most beloved pair of buddies in the entire franchise. If your character's prejudices start to become a core character trait, or start to become disruptive to the game, that's when things start to become a bit uncomfortable. Looking past the fact that it makes 0 sense for Kevin's character to hate humans for something that she did, her hatred of humans is beginning to interfere with how others enjoy the game, and that's no bueno. Look, a perfect Mary Sue of a character is never gonna be one that real people are gonna want to root for. Characters need flaws to be interesting, that is non-negotiable. But no one with a functioning brain is gonna be rooting for an irredeemable racist either. Give your characters flaws, but make sure that they're still people that your party actually wants to interact with. Game 2.5. One Shot. Kevin is the DM. I don't know why, but we played another game that he DM'd. This was a really fun, in-concept, one-shot story, where the characters we played were completely randomly generated on D&D Beyond. I got to play a total edgelord Dark Angel Asimar, and I love that. I don't love the way Kevin got mad whenever Ryan used spells, such as Disguise Self, to get around guards, but that again is just a little thing. What I really don't love was the inevitable vaguely sexual super weird part that just had to happen. Yeah, this one-shot ended with a naked dwarf girl child who was hypnotized into dancing for an evil gnome, and it was supposed to be funny. I honestly barely remember this one, but my siblings were scarred. The game we almost played. No idea who would have been the DM. I also almost played a game where we played as characters that were designed to match our favorite tropes in media. Basically, I love foxes, so I would play a kitsune. Peter loves Toho, so he'd play a Toho, that sort of thing. It was really exciting, and I even bought a mini of my character, and painted half of it because I just couldn't wait. I was really good at self-blinding, I guess. At any rate, I didn't finish painting the mini, and that game never happened because the minute Kevin found out that my character was gay, he went crazy. For jokes. Every time I tried to talk about my character's serious backstory and how it connected to Ryan's character, Kevin would turn it into some horridly uncomfortable comment about just how funny gay men are, and how I must have chosen to make this character gay because I think gay people are funny. Yeah, well, I'm gay, so yeah, that didn't happen. The Halloween one-shot. Ryan DM'd this one. This one, weirdly, was 100% okay. It also was the only one where Kevin played a male character. How curious. Game 3. Star Wars. Kevin is the DM. And then we went right back into prepping for another big game. I love how we kept doing this to ourselves. Really, I'm learning a lot just by typing this. This game was going to be a Star Wars campaign set during the Clone Wars, where Ryan played a human-female Mandalorian. I played a male Zeltron Jedi. Peter played a male human conman. And Kevin played a female Amwadi nobleman. Kevin decided that he would try and make the game more interesting by rolling for just about everything that happened. What race NPCs are, how many bad guys we fight on a map, everything. It was pretty annoying, but oh well. In this game, Kevin also decided to bring back a lot of memorable mistakes that he never learned from in the Waterdeep campaign. For example, he decided that our spaceship was pretty damaged, so we would have to collect parts to fix it as we went. That would have been pretty cool and pretty interesting for a side mission. Except that he decided, quite like how his DMPC from before, all the problems just went away. That we would fix the ship entirely, almost immediately, on like the second session, because his super rich, perfect character paid for the repairs. He also repeated the exact same mistake that he had made with my Waterdeep character. During a short trip, the characters took to a marketplace. Kevin rolled his dice to see what the NPC running the stall would look like, and somehow decided from the numbers he got that that character would also be a Zeltron. My best guess here is that any number between 1 to 5 would be connected to one of our characters. 6 to 10 would be another, etc., etc. Such as this, it could have easily been a Mandalorian. This would have created basically the same problem though, since the rolled character obviously has nothing to do with our backstories since he also just came up with them on the spot. Also, my Zeltron is a Jedi, so he has no connections to the Zeltron planet, quite like how my Drow had no connections to Drow society. It literally meant nothing to my Jedi, who has been raised in the temple on Coruscant since he was a toddler. But Kevin kept looking at me, waiting for me to act like it would meant something huge. There was also the fact that he kept using odd and uncomfortable wording for things, such as having multiple NPCs refer to Ryan's character as a she-Mando, which was just so uncomfortable, as well as the quiet fear that he was playing yet another flawless, beautiful, light-haired woman who was the absolute picture of what a man wishes feminine grace looked like in real life. This character's backstory actually had some potential to fit into the story though, so we were willing to roll with it. We even enjoyed the dynamic that all 4 of our characters have so much that we sort of naturally moved on from the end of one session into a full-on roleplay session. Kevin felt during this session that his character had nothing to say to ours though, and had her just go straight to bed, making it awkward to try and have anyone else continue chatting. He then complained about how bored he was, and how poorly the campaign was going, and he just called it quits, thus ending the campaign entirely. We're pretty sure he wasn't thrilled to learn that Ryan is an uber Star Wars fan and knows a lot about the lore, so her character just happened to be super fleshed out. Because we built our characters together, and with advice on the world of Star Wars from Ryan, Peter and I had pretty fleshed out characters too. Kevin didn't want to talk out his character with the rest of us though, and had this bizarre tendency to just zone out when you're talking to him. Unless it's his turn to talk, of course. I think he truly just waits to hear a word that he knows about something, and then just goes off on what he can think to say about whatever that word is, even if it totally derails the conversation. So like if we were talking about how Ryan's Mandalorian has an owl for her symbol, he might just pull the word Mandalorian and just start talking about how the Mandalorian Creed in the comics that he totally heard about on YouTube. Either way, he had little to no interest in working out the character with us, and that should have been fine, if he was just willing to actually do something with her. I understand that he was probably nervous after things went so badly with Waterdeep, but it's difficult to do better if you don't even do anything at all. Kevin breaks out. Kevin is a player in someone else's game. After this game, we decided that we're not compatible players, and I also kinda broke up with him. Should have done so sooner. We play our own games and work with having only 3 players, and Kevin plays with a group that he found online. I was genuinely happy for him. Maybe the issue was that we just had conflicting styles, and this group would be better for him in the long run. You already know where this is going. Yeah, he repeated another one of his old mistakes and completely abandoned his party. I remember how proudly he described his character's last stand against the final boss, as if the rest of the party wasn't even there. Because it's all about him, right? The final boss could be found inside of a rift in space-time, which the party was accidentally pulled into by a portal. With them was an NPC who the party was supposed to defend. When the fight started to get tough, Kevin had his character pick up said NPC and fly towards the portal to escape. The DM blatantly tried to slow him down by throwing all kinds of monsters at him, as if saying, "Wait, stop!" But Kevin just had his character swerve around said monsters and fly straight out of the portal. That was when he learned that the boy was the thing holding the portal open. And of course, it closed behind him, trapping his entire party inside. He literally trapped his entire party, including the cleric who was his character's in-game husband, inside of a time loop where they would have a never-ending eternal battle with an incomprehensible demon. And he was proud of this. This was, to him, the best ending. Why? Well, because he was the hero, duh. Also, this character was yet another beautiful young woman with no flaws, and a delicate, kind personality who is just so cute when she's angry. Anyways, if you stuck with me this long, thank you so much. I know it was a lot, but dang, I've been letting this sit with me way too long. And when I heard about that last campaign, I think some part of me just died. TLDR. My ex-boyfriend had a bad habit of destroying campaigns by making the same mistakes over and over. Also, he always played perfect waifus and loved to sprinkle a hint of sexism into every interaction. Well, Kevin certainly sounds like a charmer. Now, I've never played a female character before, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't in the least bit because of a certain stigma around doing so. Let me tell you, people like Kevin really don't help that stigma go away either. There's nothing wrong with playing a character of the opposite gender, and I hear that it can actually be pretty fun to further separate yourself from your character in that way. But between the subtle creepiness and underlying sexism, I have a sneaking suspicion that Kevin wasn't really doing it right. Also, is eating toast while flustered an anime thing? It feels so random and out of nowhere that I have no problem believing that weebs would latch on to it. Now before we go, let's take a look at this week's Gallery of the Drake. This week's fan art comes to us from viewer Jumgrum, and depicts a moment of my wrath. When you work in the cringe hoarding business, paperwork really begins to pile up. Cringe tax? Are you kidding me? Gas is $6 a gallon and the government is worrying about a cringe tax? Mail call! It's from Wendy's. You're getting sued for slandering them on YouTube. Larry, I swear to God, I am going to launch you into space again, but instead of the moon, I'm gonna put you on the surface of the fucking sun. Thank you again, Jumgrum, for submitting your art. If you want to see your artwork featured in Gallery of the Drake, be sure to send it to the email in my About section. Fan art is my favorite part of doing YouTube, and it means the world to me that I can inspire artists like you to create artwork like this. With the story over and artwork displayed, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you feel like supporting the channel further, my Patreon link is in the description. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time in the Den of the Drake.